The hallway echoed with laughter, the kind that wasn't born of joy but cruelty. A group of students had cornered her, their hands tightening around her throat, their voices dripping with mockery. To them, she was just another easy target, a quiet black girl who never fought back, someone they could humiliate without consequence. But what they didn't know was that behind her silence burned years of discipline, hours spent in gyms learning a craft most adults feared. She wasn't just a student. She was a trained fighter, molded in the cage of mixed martial arts. And the moment they crossed the line, they woke up something they were never prepared to face. The school bell rang and the hallways flooded with noise, lockers slamming, sneakers squeaking, voices rising in a familiar chorus of chaos. For most students, this was just another day. But for Amara Johnson, every step through those halls felt like walking into a battlefield where the enemy always struck first. She was 16, sharp-minded, and carried herself with quiet dignity. But in a world where appearances spoke louder than truth, her silence was often mistaken for weakness. Amara had moved to the school only months ago. Her mother, a nurse working double shifts, had hoped the suburban district would offer better opportunities, better chances at a future. But the glossy hallways came with their own shadows. Here, Amara's dark skin and quiet nature made her an easy mark. Whispers followed her from classroom to classroom. Comments slid across desks like poison. And when she didn't flinch, didn't break, the bullies pushed harder. What no one in those crowded halls knew was that every night, after homework was done, Amara trained. Her father had once been a fighter before life's hardships pulled him away from the ring, and he had passed on his knowledge to her. Boxing, wrestling, jiu-jitsu. She spent hours at the local gym, grinding through drills most adults would quit after minutes. Her body bore the quiet strength of someone forged in discipline, not in bravado. But Amara never flaunted it. She had learned early that real fighters didn't need to prove themselves in schoolyard squabbles. So she endured, swallowing the insults, ignoring the taunts, even when rage burned in her chest. She promised herself she would never use her skills against kids who didn't know the difference between cruelty and strength. That promise, however, was about to be tested in the harshest way. The cafeteria was always the worst part of the day. Tables divided students into invisible groups: athletes, cheerleaders, honors kids, outcasts. Amara usually sat alone, her tray half empty, her head bent over a notebook. To the bullies, her silence was an invitation. "Why don't you talk, huh?" one of them sneered one afternoon, tipping her water across the table. The cold liquid soaked her food, dripping onto her lap. The group erupted in laughter, their voices carrying across the room. Amara didn't respond. She wiped her tray, packed up her things, and moved to another table. That only made them bolder. Days turned into weeks, and the taunts grew sharper. Books knocked out of her hands, shoves into lockers. Rude chants muttered under their breath when teachers weren't listening. Amara kept her cool, repeating the same mantra in her head. Not here. Not like this. Don't give them what they want. But bullies thrive on pushing boundaries, and one day they pushed too far. It happened after the last period, when the halls were nearly empty. Amara was retrieving her things from her locker when a group of 3 cornered her. Their leader, a tall boy with a smirk that reeked of arrogance, stepped forward. "You think you're better than us?" he jeered, blocking her path. "Walking around like you don't see us. Like you're too good to answer." She said nothing, just shouldered her backpack. But as she tried to move past, a hand grabbed her arm, spinning her back around. Another shoved her hard against the lockers. The clang echoed through the hall, sharp and violent. And then one of them wrapped an arm around her neck. The choke was sloppy, untrained, but it was still dangerous. Air rushed out her lungs, and panic clawed at her chest. Their laughter filled her ears, cruel and victorious, as if they had finally broken a girl who never broke. In that moment, time seemed to slow. Amara felt the old promise rattling inside her, the vow to never use her training against classmates. But this wasn't a harmless prank. This wasn't spilled water or cruel words. This was her life in danger, and survival was not optional. Her heart steadied, her breathing slowed despite the choke. Years of drills, hours of sweat, the quiet lessons her father had instilled, all of it clicked into place. She knew exactly what to do. The bullies had mistaken silence for weakness. What they didn't realize was that silence was discipline, and discipline could turn deadly in a heartbeat. And in the next few seconds, they were about to learn that lesson in the harshest way possible. The pressure on her throat tightened, but Amara's body moved with precision. She dropped her weight suddenly, slipping under the choke just enough to free her airway. Before the boy could react, her elbow shot backward, striking his ribs with the force of years in the gym. He gasped, stumbling, his grip broken. The hallway erupted in chaos. The second bully lunged, shoving at her shoulder, but Amara pivoted sharply, sweeping his leg in one clean motion. He crashed to the ground, wind knocked out of him. The laughter was gone now, replaced by shock, by fear. The leader staggered, anger blazing in his eyes, and charged. But Amara was already set. She sidestepped, hooked his arm, and in one fluid motion, flipped him over her hip. He hit the floor with a thud that echoed like thunder through the empty hall. For a heartbeat, silence filled the air. The three who had once cornered her now lay sprawled, gasping, stunned. Amara stood above them, her breath steady, her eyes cold with the calm of someone who knew control. She didn't strike again. She didn't gloat. She simply stood there, every inch of her body radiating the truth they had failed to see. She was no victim. She had never been one. The boys scrambled, fear etched into their faces. The one who had tried to choke her clutched his ribs, glaring up at her as if seeing her for the first time. The smirk was gone, replaced by something closer to respect, or perhaps terror. Amara adjusted her backpack on her shoulder, her voice finally breaking the silence. Calm, even, deadly. Don't mistake silence for weakness. Then she walked away, leaving them in the wreckage of their own arrogance, the echoes of her quiet power lingering long after her footsteps faded. By the next morning, whispers filled the school. Rumors spread like wildfire. How the quiet girl had dismantled 3 bullies in seconds. How the fight hadn't been wild or reckless, but controlled, calculated, precise. Some exaggerated, others downplayed it. But one truth cut through every version. Amara Johnson was no longer invisible. Teachers caught wind, and administrators summoned the bullies, their swagger evaporating under questioning. For the first time, their cruelty was dragged into the light. Their parent arrived, shocked, defensive, embarrassed. The choke, the shove, the cornering in the hallway. Suddenly, their jokes had consequences. As for Amara, she carried herself the same as always. She didn't brag, didn't boast, didn't even speak of what happened. But those who had witnessed it, even from a distance, couldn't shake the image. A girl who had endured humiliation in silence, only to rise with a strength they had never imagined. Her mother heard about it that evening. Fear flickered in her eyes first. Fear for what could have happened. Fear of what it meant for her daughter to live in a world where she had to defend herself at all. But then came something else. Pride. Quiet, fierce pride in the young woman who refused to let cruelty define her. Amara knew she hadn't just defended herself. She had broken the unspoken rule bullies thrived on, that the quiet, the different, the underestimated would always stay small. She hadn't fought for vengeance. She had fought to breathe, to live, to remind them that power built on cruelty is fragile when faced with real strength. The next day in the cafeteria, no one spilled her water. No one shoved her books. She sat at her table, head high, notebook open, while the same hallways that once rang with laughter at her expense now carried a quieter tone, because respect had been earned, not through violence, but through discipline. And so the story lingers. How many people walk the halls of their own lives, mistaken for weak, until the moment they are forced to reveal the strength they've carried all along?